The year 1938 acted as a harrowing prelude to the total destruction of World War II, characterized by the aggressive territorial expansion of revisionist powers and the increasingly desperate, futile attempts of Western democracies to preserve global peace. In Europe, Adolf Hitler's calculated repudiation of the restrictive Versailles Treaty and his swift reassertion of German military dominance had won him massive popularity among the domestic population. However, beneath the public adulation, deep anxieties gripped the highest echelons of Germany's military and diplomatic corps, where senior leaders feared the reckless pace of the Führer's territorial ambitions would inevitably provoke a premature, catastrophic conflict with the British and French empires. Recognizing this internal friction, Hitler engineered a sweeping purge of his most cautious top officials early in the year, effectively neutralizing all systemic opposition to his foreign policy. He replaced the traditional, restrained foreign minister Konstantin von Neurath with the fiercely loyal and belligerently hawkish former ambassador to Britain, Joachim von Ribbentrop. Concurrently, War Minister Werner von Blomberg and Army Commander-in-Chief Werner von Fritsch were targeted with a scandalous combination of real and completely fabricated personal smears, forcing their immediate, disgraced resignations. With the old guard thoroughly eliminated, Hitler boldly appointed himself the supreme commander-in-chief of all German armed forces, the Wehrmacht, removing the final barrier to his aggressive expansionist agenda and immediately turning his attention toward Austria. Believing his native Austria to be an inseparable, integral piece of a grander German Reich, Hitler initiated intense diplomatic and military coercion against Vienna. In February, he forcefully demanded that the Austrian Chancellor, Kurt Schuschnigg, surrender control of the domestic economy and police force to leading Austrian Nazi operatives. In a desperate, defiant bid to retain national sovereignty, Schuschnigg circumvented German demands by announcing a sudden national referendum, allowing the Austrian citizenry to vote on whether they wished to remain independent or unify with Germany. This unexpected move infuriated Hitler, who fully expected the plebiscite to be rigged against his interests, and he immediately ordered massive German military formations to mobilize along the border while issuing an ultimatum demanding Schuschnigg's instant resignation. Left with no international support, Schuschnigg stepped down on March 11th, and despite the capitulation, German mechanized units rolled across the border the following morning under the disingenuous pretext of restoring civil law and order. The new Austrian Nazi Chancellor, Arthur Seyss-Inquart, ordered his country's military forces to offer zero resistance, cementing the annexation known historically as the Anschluss. While the forced union bitterly fractured Austrian society internally, thousands of euphoric supporters flooded the streets, throwing flowers and waving swastika flags to welcome the invading forces. Hitler made a triumphal entry into Vienna on March 14th, and a subsequent, heavily monitored and rigged referendum returned a staggering, implausible 99.7% public approval rate for the annexation. Behind the public facade of joyful unification, a wave of systematic terror began as the Gestapo rapidly rounded up thousands of political dissidents, including ex-Chancellor Schuschnigg, who was condemned to spend the next 7 years inside a concentration camp. Simultaneously, Austrian Nazis, heavily abetted by the German invaders, unleashed a wave of anti-Semitic violence, viciously beating Viennese Jews, vandalizing their properties, and forcing them to scrub political slogans off the pavement on their hands and knees in front of mocking, jeering crowds. While Britain issued toothless diplomatic protests, France sat entirely paralyzed, completely distracted by the sudden collapse of yet another internal coalition government. The only continental power capable of military intervention, fascist Italy, stood by silently because Benito Mussolini, who had actively blocked a German annexation of Austria 4 years earlier, was now firmly aligned with Hitler as both dictators sought to build their respective empires. With Austria successfully absorbed, Hitler immediately redirected his geopolitical focus toward the dismantling of neighboring Czechoslovakia, a state he openly loathed as an artificial, illegitimate creation of the Versailles peace settlement. As detailed in the secretive Hossbach Memorandum of 1937, Hitler sought the immediate annexation of the Sudetenland, a heavily fortified Czechoslovakian border region inhabited by more than 3 million ethnic Germans, many of whom actively desired unification with the Reich. In May 1938, unsubstantiated rumors of an imminent German military buildup along the frontier ignited a massive pan-European war scare, plunging civilian populations into states of pure panic as cities prepared for immediate aerial bombardment and the potential deployment of deadly poison gas. Behind the scenes, the German military was actively preparing Case Green, a specialized invasion plan scheduled for early October, even as prominent generals warned Hitler that Germany's western border would be swiftly overrun within weeks if the French military honored its defensive alliance with Prague. General Ludwig Beck, the chief of the General Staff, resigned in a principled protest against the impending invasion, eventually becoming a central figure in the underground anti-Hitler resistance. Sensing the profound aversion to war within the Western democracies, British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain bypassed traditional diplomatic channels and flew directly to Germany to negotiate face-to-face with Hitler at his mountain retreat. These frantic diplomatic maneuvers culminated in the late September Munich Conference, where Great Britain, France, Fascist Italy, and Nazi Germany decided the fate of Central Europe, while notably excluding both the Soviet Union and Czechoslovakia from the negotiations. Seeking to appease the dictator at any cost, Chamberlain and French Premier Édouard Daladier signed an agreement ceding the Sudetenland to Germany in exchange for a hollow verbal guarantee from Hitler that he harbored no further territorial ambitions in Europe. Abandoned by its Western allies, Czechoslovakia was forced to capitulate, and within weeks, neighboring Poland and Hungary capitalized on the nation's profound vulnerability to seize respective border territories in Transalza and southern Slovakia. Chamberlain returned to London to a hero's welcome, proudly declaring he had secured peace for our time. But this widespread optimism was built upon a fatal misreading of Hitler's true intent. The German dictator was privately infuriated at being deprived of a glorious local war and vowed that his next territorial expansion would be resolved exclusively through overwhelming military violence. The catastrophic geopolitical capitulation at Munich resonated globally, dealing a devastating psychological blow to anti-fascist movements, particularly within the Spanish Civil War, where the beleaguered Republican forces were locked in an existential battle against General Francisco Franco's nationalists. Following a brutal nationalist offensive through Aragon that successfully sliced Republican territory completely in two, the Republican army launched a desperate, last-ditch counterattack across the Ebro River, only to have their remaining elite forces completely decimated in the heaviest, bloodiest fighting of the entire civil conflict. Back within the expanding borders of the German Reich, state-sponsored racial violence reached a terrifying, unprecedented crescendo in November when a young Jewish teenager assassinated a German diplomat in Paris. The Nazi regime weaponized this event to instigate a massive, highly coordinated nationwide pogrom known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, during which state-backed mobs demolished thousands of Jewish businesses, burned synagogues to the ground, and desecrated cemeteries. Hundreds of Jewish citizens were murdered in the streets, and approximately 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and thrown into concentration camps, sparking immense international outrage, widespread journalistic condemnation of Nazi barbarism, and the immediate recall of the United States ambassador. Concurrently, across the globe in East Asia, the Second Sino-Japanese War continued to rage with unparalleled ferocity, completely unhindered by failed peace initiatives attempted by Germany's diplomats. In March 1938, the Japanese parliament passed the sweeping state general mobilization law, effectively stripping away civilian governance and granting the military regime absolute, unchecked control over the domestic media, national industry, and the entire economy to feed the insatiable demands of total war. Seeking to link their disparate territorial gains and seize control of China's vital north-south railway networks, Japanese forces engaged a massive Chinese army around the strategic city of Suzhou in a ferocious campaign involving nearly 1 million combatants. Although the Chinese military achieved a brilliant, monumental tactical victory at Taierswang in April, boosting domestic morale, the looming threat of mass encirclement eventually forced a strategic Chinese withdrawal southward toward the crucial industrial city of Wuhan. Faced with an imminent, unstoppable Japanese advance toward Wuhan, Chinese nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek made the astonishingly ruthless, desperate decision to deliberately breach the massive dikes holding back the Yellow River. Executed in June with absolute secrecy and without issuing any warnings to the local civilian population, this extreme scorched earth tactic unleashed a cataclysmic torrent of water that instantly flooded the vast agricultural basin, resulting in the horrific deaths of an estimated 900,000 Chinese peasants via drowning, starvation, and subsequent disease outbreaks. while creating over 4 million internal refugees in what stands as the most destructive man-made environmental disaster in human history. Though this catastrophic sacrifice temporarily slowed the Japanese mechanized advance, it ultimately failed to preserve Wuhan, which became the center of a grueling, 4-month battle drawing in more than 1.3 million troops. Japanese forces utilized their vastly superior military training, modern heavy artillery, and lethal poison gas to inflict staggering casualties on the numerically superior but poorly equipped Chinese defenders. In October, a separate Japanese amphibious force landed in southern China and captured the major port city of Canton, effectively severing the critical maritime routes through which nearly 80% of all international military supplies reached nationalist China. This successful flanking maneuver completely undercut the strategic utility of Wuhan, which finally collapsed to the Japanese military later that month. However, the stubborn, protracted Chinese defense of the city successfully bought Chiang Kai-shek enough time to dismantle entire industrial factories and withdraw his surviving military forces westward into the deep interior capital of Chongqing, heavily shielded by treacherous mountain ranges. While the Imperial Japanese Army now occupied China's wealthiest metropolitan centers and controlled roughly 87% of her total pre-war productive capacity, their vast conquests had cost immense blood and treasure without yielding a definitive Chinese surrender. The Japanese High Command suddenly found itself bogged down in a draining, protracted military stalemate across a massive continent, plagued by intense logistical failures and constantly harassed by coordinated nationalist and communist guerrilla networks. Desperate to find an end to the quagmire, Japan's military leadership watched their northern border with growing terror, where escalating territorial tensions with the Soviet Union had erupted into a bloody clash at Lake Khasan during the summer of 1938. Providing a violent preview of the full-scale border war that would explode between the two empires the following year.